The wagon train had been crawling westward for 3 weeks when Sarah McKenna first saw the Apache warriors on the ridge. They appeared like ghosts against the burning sky, their silhouettes sharp and still as carved stone. The other women in the convoy gasped and clutched their children, but Sarah merely tightened her grip on the reins and kept her eyes forward. She had learned, in the year since Thomas died, that fear was a luxury she could no longer afford. The Arizona Territory stretched before them like a sea of gold and rust, broken only by towering red rocks that rose from the earth like ancient monuments. The October sun was merciless, turning the canvas wagon tops into ovens and cracking the lips of even the hardiest travelers. Sarah's bonnet provided little relief from the heat, and sweat trickled down her spine, soaking through the black morning dress she still wore out of habit more than grief. "Mrs. McKenna," called Samuel Morrison from the wagon ahead. "You'd best keep close. Those savages have been tracking us for days." Sarah nodded, but said nothing. At 23, she had already learned that men like Morrison's soft-handed merchants who'd never known real hardship were quick to offer advice, but slow to provide actual help. When Thomas had died of fever on their small Missouri farm, not one of their neighbors had offered to help with the harvest. Now she was alone, traveling to find her sister in California, carrying all her worldly possessions in a wagon that creaked with every turn of the wheels. The attack came at dusk, but not from the Apaches. Sarah was gathering buffalo chips for the evening fire when she heard the first shots. White men, she could tell by their boots and spurs, came thundering out of a narrow canyon, firing wildly at the circled wagons. These were no ordinary bandits. They moved with military precision, targeting the men first, then the supplies. "Hey, get down!" someone screamed, and Sarah dropped behind a wagon wheel just as a bullet splintered the wood above her head. The air filled with gunpowder smoke and the terrible sounds of panic. Horses screaming, children crying, men shouting orders that no one followed. Through the chaos, Sarah saw Morrison fall, clutching his shoulder. His wife stood frozen in terror as a bandit approached, rifle raised. Without thinking, Sarah grabbed a cast-iron skillet from the wagon and swung it with all her strength. Catching the man across the temple, he dropped like a stone, and Sarah pulled Mrs. Morrison to safety. That's when the Apaches came. They descended from the ridge like a flash flood, their war cries cutting through the evening air. The bandits, caught between the wagon train and the Apache warriors, scattered in confusion. Sarah watched in amazement as the Apache riders moved with fluid grace, their movements coordinated and deadly. Within minutes, the surviving bandits were fleeing back into the canyon, leaving their dead behind. An eerie silence fell over the camp. The Apache warriors sat on their horses, watching the survivors emerge from their hiding places. Their leader, Sarah could tell by the eagle feathers in his hair and the way the others deferred to him, rode slowly around the wagon's circle. His eyes were dark and unreadable, taking in the damage, the dead, the frightened faces of women and children. He said something in his language, and his warriors began to withdraw. As quickly as they had come, they vanished back into the gathering darkness, leaving the wagon train to count its losses. 7 men dead, including the wagon master, 12 wounded. 3 wagons burned beyond repair, as the survivors gathered to discuss their options. Sarah noticed the way they looked at her, the woman who'd fought back, who'd drawn blood. Their expressions were not grateful but wary, as if her actions had marked her as something dangerous, unnatural. "We can't take her," she heard someone whisper. "She's cursed. First her husband, now this." By morning, the decision was made. The surviving wagons would continue with those who could travel. The badly wounded would be left with what supplies could be spared, to follow when they could or die trying. Sarah, despite being uninjured, found herself in the second group. "It's nothing personal," Morrison said, his arm in a sling, not meeting her eyes. "But the others, they think you bring bad luck. That skillet business, it's not natural for a woman." Sarah watched the wagons disappear into the morning heat haze, taking with them her last connection to civilization. The wounded men around her moaned and cursed, but she had no medicine to offer them. No comfort but water from the dwindling supply. By the third day, the wounded began to die. By the fourth, Sarah was alone. The sandstorm struck on the fifth day. It came rolling across the desert like a brown wall, blotting out the sun. Sarah wrapped her face in torn petticoat fabric and huddled in the lee of an overturned wagon. But the sand found every gap, filling her nose and mouth, scouring her skin raw. She didn't hear the horse approach. One moment she was alone in the howling wind. The next, a figure loomed above her, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing leather and cloth that seemed to deflect the worst of the storm. Through sand-stung eyes, she saw a face that was neither cruel nor kind, but watchful, assessing. The warrior, for that's what he was. She could see it in his bearing, extended a hand. Sarah hesitated. Everything she'd been taught, every warning about savages and their treatment of white women, flashed through her mind. But the storm was killing her by degrees, and death by Apache seemed no worse than death by sand. She took his hand. He pulled her up onto his horse with surprising gentleness, positioning her in front of him, sheltered by his body. His arm came around her waist to hold the reins, and Sarah found herself pressed against his chest. He smelled of leather and sage, of smoke and something wild she couldn't name. The horse moved with sure steps through the blinding storm, guided by some instinct or knowledge Sarah didn't possess. Exhaustion overtook fear. The rhythmic movement of the horse, the solid warmth of the warrior's chest, the strange safety of being held by this stranger, it all combined to pull her toward unconsciousness. As the storm raged around them, Sarah's eyes closed, her head fell back against his shoulder, and despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the complete abandonment of propriety, she slept. She slept against his Apache chest, trusting her life to an enemy she didn't know, never imagining that this moment of surrender would seal her fate forever. In the language of his people, there were laws older than memory, bonds that could be forged in a single night. But Sarah McKenna, widow of Missouri, knew nothing of Apache law. She only knew that she was alive, and, for now, that was enough. Sarah woke to voices arguing in a language she didn't understand. The words were sharp and guttural, rising and falling like wind through canyon walls. She lay still, eyes closed, trying to orient herself. She was on something soft blankets or furs, and the air smelled of wood smoke and tanned hide. Through her eyelids, she could see flickering firelight. Memory returned in fragments: the storm, the warrior, falling asleep against his chest. Her eyes snapped open. She was inside a dwelling made of bent saplings and hide, larger than she'd expected. Around a central fire pit sat several Apache women, their faces painted with ochre and ash, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. They fell silent when they saw she was awake. The oldest among them, a woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes like polished obsidian, spoke in halting English. "You wake. This is good. Now we decide." "Decide what?" Sarah's voice came out as a croak. Someone handed her a gourd of water, and she drank gratefully. "Whether you live or die," the old woman said simply. The tent flap opened, and men entered. Sarah recognized her rescuer immediately. He moved with the same fluid grace she remembered, though in the firelight she could see him more clearly. His face was weathered but not old, perhaps 30 summers, with a scar across his left cheekbone that spoke of past battles. Behind him came other warriors and an elderly man whose presence commanded immediate respect. The chief, for surely that's who he was, studied Sarah with rheumy but sharp eyes. He spoke at length in Apache, gesturing occasionally toward her. The warriors responded, some arguing vehemently. Sarah caught her rescuer's Apache name repeated several times: Standing Wolf. It suited him, she thought, watching his stillness amid the debate. Finally, the old woman translated. Chief Naichi says you bring trouble. White soldiers will come looking. Some say kill you now. Leave your body where they find it. Others say the storm was a sign the spirit sent Standing Wolf to find you. But I didn't ask to be rescued, Sarah protested. I was dying. He could have left me. The old woman's eyes glinted with something that might have been amusement. Yes, he could have, but he brought you here, and you... She paused, choosing her words carefully. You slept in his protection through the night. So, Sarah's confusion must have shown on her face. Now, several of the women giggled, quickly hushed by their elders. The old woman, Sarah would later learn she was called Sage Mother, leaned forward. Our law is old, older than these mountains. When a woman sleeps in a warrior's arms through the night, when she trusts him with her life while she dreams, she becomes his. The words took a moment to penetrate. When they did, Sarah shot to her feet. That's insane. I was unconscious. I was dying. You were not forced, Sage Mother said calmly. Standing Wolf says you took his hand. You came willingly to his horse. You rested against him and slept. These are choices. I was trying not to die? Yes, the old woman agreed. And in not dying, you chose him. Sarah looked wildly around the circle of faces, searching for understanding, for reason. Her eyes met Standing Wolf's, and she saw something there. Regret, resignation. He spoke in Apache, his voice low and measured. Sage Mother translated. He says he did not know you would sleep. He thought only to bring you to safety. But the law is the law. Chief Naichi raised his hand for silence. He spoke again. And this time, Sarah heard judgment in his tone. Sage Mother nodded slowly. The chief is merciful. He gives you a choice. Accept what has happened. Become Standing Wolf's wife. Live as Apache, or... She paused. Take the trial of refusal. What's that? 7 days. You must survive 7 days alone in the desert, without help, without protection. If you live, you are free of the bond. If Standing Wolf finds you before the 7 days end, you must accept your fate. Sarah's mind raced. Marriage to a savage. It was unthinkable. But 7 days in the desert? She'd barely survived 5 days with the wagon supplies. What if I refuse both? Sage Mother's expression hardened. Then you are a woman without protection in a camp of warriors. The chief's mercy has limits. The threat was clear. Sarah sank back down, her legs suddenly weak. Around her, the Apache waited. She could feel their eyes on her, judging, measuring. Some clearly wanted her gone. She could see it in their faces. Others seemed merely curious about what the white woman would choose. Can I think about it? Chief Naichi spoke briefly, then rose and left the dwelling. The others followed, all except Sage Mother and Standing Wolf. You have until sunrise. Sage Mother said, I will stay with you tonight. To protect, she added, with a meaningful glance at Standing Wolf, who remained by the entrance, arms crossed. Through the long night, Sarah wrestled with her choice. Sage Mother dozed by the fire, but woke whenever Sarah moved. As if even in sleep she kept watch. Standing Wolf never moved from his position, a silent guardian or guard. Sarah couldn't tell which. Tell me about the trial. Sarah finally whispered. Sage Mother's eyes opened. You know desert. A little. A little is not enough. Desert in day burns skin from bones. Desert at night freezes blood. No water but what you find. No food but what desert gives. And Standing Wolf. She glanced at the warrior. Best tracker in our band. Never has he failed to find what he seeks. So it's impossible. Not impossible, but no woman has succeeded in my lifetime. Sarah studied Standing Wolf in the firelight. What kind of man is he? Sage Mother was quiet so long Sarah thought she wouldn't answer. Then, good man, honored warrior. His first wife died 3 summers ago, in childbirth. The child, too. He has not taken another, though many women would have him. Why did he save me? This you must ask him. But I think the old woman studied the fire. I think he saw someone who fights to live. This is rare in your people. Most give up, wait for death. You fought the bandits. You survived the storm. Perhaps he saw a spirit like his own. Dawn came too soon. The entire band gathered as Sarah emerged from the dwelling. She had washed as best she could and tried to tame her sand-damaged hair. She still wore her torn black dress, widow's weeds that now seemed like a mockery. Chief Naichi waited with formal ceremony. Standing Wolf stood apart, his expression unreadable. Sage Mother translated as the chief spoke. Choose. Sarah looked at the assembled faces, warriors suspicious and hostile, women curious and wary, children peeking from behind their mother's skirts. Then she looked at Standing Wolf. Their eyes met, and in his, she saw something unexpected understanding. He knew what he asked her to give up. He knew the impossibility of her situation. But he had saved her life. That had to count for something. The trial. Sarah heard herself say, I choose the trial. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some nodded approval. The white woman had courage. At least, others shook their heads. The fool would be dead in 3 days. Sage Mother translated the rules. 7 days, she could take a water gourd, a knife, and the clothes she wore. She must stay within the valley boundaries, no fleeing to white settlements. If Standing Wolf found her before sunset on the 7th day, she must return and accept her fate without further protest. Do you understand? Sarah nodded, though her heart hammered against her ribs. They gave her the promised items and led her to the edge of camp. The desert stretched before her, already shimmering with heat, though the sun had barely risen. Standing Wolf watched from a distance, and just before she left, he spoke. Sage Mother translated his words. He says, run far, hide well. He will not begin tracking until tomorrow's sunrise, to give you fair chance. But after that, she shrugged. He will come. Sarah shouldered the water gourd, gripped the knife, and walked into the desert without looking back. Behind her, she heard wagering begin. How long would the white woman last? 2 days, 3. She'd show them. Somehow, some way, she'd survive the full 7 days. She had to, because the alternative, becoming wife to an Apache warrior, living among people who saw her as a curse or curiosity, giving up any chance of finding her sister or returning to civilization was impossible, wasn't it? The failed trial had broken something in Sarah, not her spirit, exactly, but her certainty. She'd been so sure she could survive, so determined to prove them wrong. Now she sat in Standing Wolf's dwelling, technically his wife, though he hadn't so much as looked at her since carrying her back from the desert. The other women avoided her. When she went to fetch water, conversation stopped. When she tried to help with daily tasks, they found excuses to move away. Children who ventured too close were quickly pulled back by watchful mothers. The word followed her like a shadow. White Witch. Sarah had never felt more alone. Standing Wolf was gone most days, hunting or scouting with the other warriors. When he was in camp, he slept outside the dwelling, leaving the interior to her. He spoke to her only when necessary, and always through others. It was as if she were a ghost haunting his life, invisible and untouchable. 3 weeks passed this way. Sarah learned to move through the camp like smoke, disturbing no one, expecting nothing. She practiced the Apache word Sage Mother grudgingly taught her, mended her tattered dress with sinew and hide, and tried not to think about her sister in California, who must surely believe her dead. The day everything changed began with a child's scream. Sarah was grinding mesquite pods when she heard it, high, terrified, agonized. She dropped the grinding stone and ran toward the sound. A crowd had gathered near the central fire pit, and Sarah pushed through despite the hostile looks. Little Hawk, a boy of perhaps 6 summers, lay writhing on the ground. His right leg was mangled, flesh torn and bleeding freely. His mother, Singing River, held him while tears streamed down her face. The camp's medicine man, ancient and half-blind, was shaking his rattle and chanting, but the boy's screams only grew louder. "Mountain cat," someone said in broken English. Seeing Sarah's horrified expression, Boy went too far from camp. Sarah's mind raced. The wound was severe, but not necessarily fatal, if infection could be prevented. She'd helped Dr. Morrison back in Missouri, had seen him treat similar injuries, but these people wouldn't want her help, would they? The medicine man's chanting grew louder, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Little Hawk's eyes were rolling back, his small body going into shock. His mother's wails joined his cries. Sarah couldn't stand it. She pushed forward, dropping to her knees beside the boy. "Let me help," she said in her broken Apache. Then, in English, "Please, I know healing." The crowd recoiled. Several warriors moved to pull her away, but a sharp command stopped them. Standing Wolf had appeared, drawn by the commotion. He looked at Sarah, at the dying boy, at the desperate mother. "You know white man's medicine?" he asked, speaking English for the first time since her trial. "Yes, but I need things: clean water, boiled, cloth for bandages, whiskey or tequila if you have it, and fire, hot iron for—" She gestured, not knowing the word for cauterization. Black Crow, one of the most hostile warriors, spat at her feet. "She'll kill him with her witch ways." "He's dying now," Sarah shot back, surprised by her own vehemence. "Your medicine man's prayers aren't stopping the bleeding." The insult to the medicine man caused an uproar, but Singing River suddenly grasped Sarah's hands. "Save my son," she pleaded in Apache. "Please." Standing Wolf silenced the crowd with a gesture. "Let her try," he said. Then, to Sarah, "If the boy dies—" "He won't," Sarah said with more confidence than she felt. "But I need those things now." What followed was the longest hour of Sarah's life. She cleaned the wound with boiled water, picking out debris with painstaking care. The whiskey produced reluctantly from someone's private store served to clean her hands in the wound. The worst part was the cauterization, using a heated knife blade to seal the deepest gashes. Little Hawk screamed himself unconscious, which was a mercy. Sarah worked with steady hands, remembering Dr. Morrison's calm voice. "Fear has no place in healing, girl. Save your shaking for after." She sutured the worst tears with sinew, the only thread available, then packed the wound with a poultice of yarrow and sage plants she recognized from Missouri that grew here too. Finally, she bound the leg tightly with strips of clean buckskin. Only when she sat back did she realize the entire camp had gathered to watch. The silence was absolute. "He needs water," Sarah said, exhaustion making her voice hoarse. "Small sips, and keep the leg elevated. The fever will come tonight, that's normal. We'll need willow bark tea for the pain and fever. I'll need to clean and redress the wound twice daily." Singing River clutched her son, tears still flowing, but now mixed with hope. The medicine man shuffled forward, and Sarah tensed, expecting condemnation. Instead, he reached out one gnarled hand and touched her forehead, speaking words she didn't understand. "He says the spirits work through many vessels," Sage Mother translated, appearing at Sarah's elbow. "Even unexpected ones." The crowd began to disperse, but the atmosphere had shifted. The hostile stares were now mixed with curiosity, even grudging respect. Sarah cleaned up her makeshift medical supplies, her hands finally beginning to shake. A shadow fell over her. Standing Wolf stood there, his expression unreadable as always. "You took a great risk," he said in English. "Someone had to. If he had died, they would have blamed you. Black Crow would have demanded." He didn't finish. "I know," Sarah met his eyes. "But I couldn't watch a child die when I might help." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or approval. He turned to go, then paused. "My first wife," he said quietly. "She also had healing hands." It was the first personal thing he'd ever told her. Little Hawk's fever came as predicted, raging through the night. Sarah barely slept, maintaining her vigil alongside Singing River. She bathed the boy with cool water, forced willow bark tea between his lips, and whispered prayers that were part Christian, part desperate hope. By dawn, the fever broke. Little Hawk opened clear eyes and asked for water. The relief in the dwelling was palpable. Word spread quickly. The white woman had saved Little Hawk. She had medicine skills. Maybe she wasn't a witch after all, or if she was, perhaps a beneficial one. Over the following days, as Little Hawk improved, Sarah found her status subtly changing. Women began to nod when she passed. A few brought small ailments, a burned hand, a colicky baby, a persistent cough. Sarah treated what she could with her limited knowledge and supplies, always careful to show respect for traditional methods. But not everyone was convinced. Black Crow watched her with undisguised suspicion, speaking against her at council fires. She caught enough Apache now to understand his basic argument. She was still an outsider, still dangerous. Her medicine knowledge only made her more so. What if she was a spy, sent to gain their trust? The confrontation came one evening as Sarah returned from gathering medicinal plants. Black Crow blocked her path, 2 other warriors flanking him. He spoke in rapid Apache, but his tone needed no translation. Sarah's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stand straight. "I don't understand," she said in Apache, though she caught more words than she let on. Black Crow switched to broken English. "You think we stupid, think we not see white woman learns our ways, our paths. Soon soldiers come. I haven't sent any messages. How could I?" He stepped closer, and Sarah smelled whiskey on his breath. "Maybe you no need messages. Maybe they come looking already." One of his companions said something warning, but Black Crow shoved him aside. He grabbed Sarah's arm, his grip painful. "Better you die in desert, better Standing Wolf let you rot." "Let her go!" Standing Wolf's voice came from behind, quiet but with an edge like flint. Black Crow released Sarah's arm but didn't back down. "You protect your white woman. You forget what they did to your first wife." The temperature seemed to drop. Standing Wolf moved past Sarah, positioning himself between her and Black Crow. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "My wife is my concern, not yours. She is concern of all, she brings danger. She saved Little Hawk. Would you tell Singing River her son should have died?" Black Crow had no answer for that. He spat on the ground near Sarah's feet, then stalked away, his companions following. Standing Wolf watched them go, tension in every line of his body. Then he turned to Sarah. "Are you hurt?" She rubbed her arm where bruises were already forming. "No." He studied her for a long moment. Black Crow speaks from fear, but he's not alone in his thoughts. You should be careful. I'm always careful. No, he said softly. You're not. A careful woman would have let Little Hawk die rather than risk herself. A careful woman wouldn't gather plants alone. He gestured at her basket of medicinal herbs. Careful is not your way. Sarah didn't know how to respond to that. They stood in awkward silence until Standing Wolf spoke again. Come, Sage Mother is making stew. You need to eat. It was the first time he'd invited her to share a meal. As they walked back to camp together, Sarah felt something shift between them. Not friendship exactly, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. That night, for the first time since her failed trial, Standing Wolf slept inside the dwelling, though still on opposite sides of the fire. Sarah lay awake, aware of his presence, of his breathing in the darkness. This was her life now, this strange half-marriage to a man she barely knew, among people who barely tolerated her. But tonight, for the first time, it didn't feel like a prison sentence. It felt like possibility. The drought came like a thief, stealing moisture from the air and hope from the people. For 2 months, no rain had fallen. The usual water sources dwindled to mud, then to cracked earth. The horses grew thin, their ribs showing through dusty hides. Children cried from thirst, and mothers had barely enough water to wet their lips. Sarah watched the band grow desperate. They moved camp twice, seeking new sources, but found only dry stream beds and bitter disappointment. The sacred spring that had sustained them for generations gave only a trickle, carefully rationed among the weakest. Chief Naichi called a council. The warriors debated in voices grown hoarse from thirst. Some wanted to raid the white settlements for supplies. Others spoke of moving deeper into the mountains, though that meant risking conflict with other bands. Standing Wolf argued for patience, for one more search for water, but even his voice lacked conviction. "We could go to the reservation," someone suggested, and was immediately shouted down. Better to die free than live caged on this. All agreed. Sarah sat at the edge of the gathering, as always on the margins, but no longer entirely excluded. In the months since healing Little Hawk, she'd earned a measure of acceptance, though Black Crow still watched her with suspicion. Now she cleared her throat. "I might know something," she said in her improving Apache. All eyes turned to her. Standing Wolf frowned. "Speak." During my trial. She struggled for words. "I found a place, old riverbed, very old. The ground looked different. In Missouri, we called it water sign, where water runs underground." "Why didn't you drink then?" Black Crow demanded. Sarah's cheeks burned. "I tried to dig, my hands. I couldn't dig deep enough, but with tools, with many people." Chief Naichi raised his hand for silence. "Where is this place?" Sarah closed her eyes, remembering. Half-day walk toward the red rocks that looked like sleeping bears. There was a dead cottonwood, struck by lightning, and past that. She described the landmarks as best she could. The debate resumed. Could they trust the white woman's memory? Was it worth the effort when they had so little strength left? But what choice did they have? Finally, Chief Naichi decided. A small group would go. Standing Wolf would lead, taking 3 other warriors and Sarah. If they found water, they would signal with smoke. If not, the band would move at dawn, regardless. They left before sunrise, carrying digging tools and empty water vessels. Hope, Sarah thought, weighed nothing but felt heavier than stones. The warriors said little as they walked, saving their strength. Standing Wolf stayed close to her, occasionally offering his arm when she stumbled on the rough terrain. The sun climbed mercilessly. By midday, Sarah began to doubt her memory. Had the rocks looked like bears? Or was that wishful thinking? Was the lightning-struck tree the right one? Or had there been others? Then she saw it. A depression in the earth, different from the surrounding desert. The soil was darker, and tough grasses grew in a line suggesting moisture below. "Here," she said, her voice cracking. "I think, here." The warriors exchanged glances. It looked like nothing, just another piece of barren ground. But Standing Wolf took up a digging stick. "We try." They dug in shifts, the hole growing deeper as the sun peaked and began its descent. 3 feet down, the soil grew cooler. At 4 feet, damp. At 5 feet, Standing Wolf's stick hit something that made a different sound. "Rock?" asked one warrior. "No." Standing Wolf dug more carefully. "Wood. Old wood." They uncovered what appeared to be logs, placed deliberately. An old covering, perhaps from ancient times when this land knew different peoples. Working together, they pried the logs aside. Water seeped into the hole. For a moment, no one moved. Then one of the warriors let out a whoop that echoed off the canyon walls. Water not much yet, just seepage, but where it seeped, more might flow. They dug with renewed energy, widening the hole, following the moisture. As they removed more logs and stones, clearly placed by human hands in some distant past, water began to pool, then to flow. It came from some underground source, clean and cold and miraculous. The old ones knew, Standing Wolf said softly. They covered it, saved it for great need. Sarah sank to her knees, overwhelmed. She had led them to water, the white woman, the outsider, the burden. She had helped save them. Standing Wolf's hand touched her shoulder. You did well, he said simply. But in his eyes she saw something more than approval. She saw recognition of her worth, her place, her belonging. They built the signal fire with precious dried brush, sending smoke spiraling into the sky. Within hours, the entire band arrived, cautious hope transforming to joy as they saw the flowing water. Children splashed and laughed. Horses drank deeply. Water vessels were filled and refilled. That night, there was celebration. Fresh meat from a successful hunt, water to drink freely, songs of gratitude to the spirits. Sarah found herself pulled into the circle of women, no longer separated but included. Singing River pressed a necklace of shells into her hands, a gift of friendship. Other women shared their food, their smiles, even their gossip, translated helpfully by those who knew some English. Even Black Crow nodded to her, though he said nothing. Action spoke louder than words, and her action had saved them all. As the fire burned low, Standing Wolf appeared at her side. Walk with me, he said. They moved away from the celebration, toward the new spring. The desert night was cool, stars brilliant overhead. At the water's edge, Standing Wolf stood silent for so long Sarah wondered if she should speak. Finally, he reached into a pouch at his belt and withdrew something that caught the moonlight, a necklace of turquoise and silver, delicate and old. This was my first wife's, he said, given by her grandmother, and her grandmother's grandmother before. It carries the blessing of the ancestors. Sarah's breath caught. I can't. You are my wife, he interrupted gently. In name, yes, but... He paused, choosing words carefully. Today you became Apache, not by blood, but by deed. You thought not of yourself, but of the people. This is the Apache way. He stepped behind her, fastening the necklace around her throat. The turquoise lay cool against her skin, a weight both foreign and right. Your first wife, Sarah said softly. Tell me about her. Standing Wolf was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, her name was Morning Star. She was full of light, quick to laugh, quick to anger, quick to forgive. When the soldiers came to our winter camp 3 years ago, she was heavy with child. She ran, but... His voice roughened. They shot her in the back. She lived long enough to birth our son, but he was too small, too early. They both left me that night. Sarah turned to face him, seeing the pain etched in the lines of his face. Without thinking, she reached up to touch the scar on his cheekbone. From that day. Yes, I fought badly. With rage, not wisdom. Almost died myself. Sometimes wished I had. But you didn't. No. He caught her hand, holding it against his face. The spirits had other plans. They sent me a stubborn white woman who doesn't know when to give up. Despite everything. Sarah found herself almost smiling. Is that what I am? Among other things. His thumb traced the bruises Black Crow had left on her arm, now fading to yellow. You are also brave, and kind, and terrible at hiding in the desert. That's not fair. I lasted 4 days. 3.5? They stood close now, the argument gentle, almost teasing. Sarah realized this was the most Standing Wolf had ever spoken to her, the most human he'd allowed himself to be. The moonlight turned his bronze skin to silver, made his dark eyes deeper. I should tell you, she said, about my husband, Thomas. Standing Wolf waited. He was a good man, steady. We married young. I was 17. He was 20. We had a farm in Missouri, small but ours. He wanted children, many children, but they never came. 5 years we tried, and nothing. He never blamed me. but I saw the disappointment. Then the fever came through our county. He was strong, always so strong, but the fever took him in 3 days. I held his hand as he died. Promised I'd go to California to find my sister. Sold the farm, bought passage with the wagon train. You know the rest. Do you mourn him still? Sarah considered. I mourn the life we planned, the children we never had, the years we should have shared, but the sharp edge of grief that has dulled. Is that wrong? No, the dead want us to live. Morningstar told me this as she died. Live, she said, for both of us. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the water flow from the ancient spring. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, like ice breaking on a frozen river. For months she had existed in this camp, survived, endured. But tonight, for the first time, she felt alive. Thank you, she said, for the necklace, for seeing me as more than a burden. Standing Wolf cupped her face in his hands. You were never a burden. I was the one who couldn't see. Grief is like dust in the eyes. It blinds us to what stands before us. He leaned down, and Sarah thought he might kiss her. Her heart hammered, part fear, part anticipation, but he merely pressed his forehead to hers. An Apache gesture of affection she'd seen between married couples. Come, he said at last. The people celebrate. We should join them. As they walked back to the fire, Sarah touched the turquoise at her throat. She was still a white woman among Apaches, still an outsider in many ways. But tonight she had proved her worth. Tonight she belonged. And Standing Wolf's hand in hers felt like a promise of more to come. The riders appeared on the horizon like a dark smudge against the morning sky. Sarah was grinding corn when the scout's warning cry went up, sending the camp into controlled chaos. Women gathered children. Warriors reached for weapons. And Chief Naichi emerged from his dwelling with the bearing of a man who'd faced such moments before. White men, the scout reported. Soldiers and others. They carry a white flag. Standing Wolf found Sarah among the women preparing to flee if necessary. Stay close to Sage Mother, he instructed. If fighting starts... They're not here to fight, Sarah interrupted, a cold certainty filling her. They're here for me. His jaw tightened. You don't know that. But she did, somehow. She knew. The party consisted of 12 men, 6 soldiers led by a young lieutenant, 4 civilian riders, and 2 men Sarah recognized with a sinking heart. Samuel Morrison, his arm still showing signs of the old injury, and Jacob Henley, who'd lost his brother in the bandit attack. They stopped at the edge of camp, respecting the Apache warriors who had materialized like shadows. Arrows knocked but not drawn. The lieutenant, barely old enough to shave, cleared his throat nervously. We come in peace. He called out, We're looking for a white woman taken captive. Mrs. Sarah McKenna, we have reports she may be here. Chief Naichi stepped forward. Standing Wolf at his right hand, the old chief's English was limited, but his dignity needed no translation. No captives here, he said clearly. Morrison pushed forward. Now, see here, we know she's with you. The Turner boys saw her at the water gathering last month. Said she was dressed like a squaw, but it was definitely her. Sarah felt the turquoise necklace burn against her throat. The Turner boys? She remembered them. 2 prospectors who'd stumbled near the spring, half dead from thirst. The band had given them water, sent them on their way. An act of mercy that now brought danger. We're here to rescue her, the lieutenant added, trying to sound authoritative. By order of Fort Buchanan, any white woman held against her will must be returned to civilization. Standing Wolf's hand moved to his knife. Around the camp, tension ratcheted higher. One wrong word, one sudden movement, and blood would flow. Sarah made her decision. She stepped out from among the women, walking with measured steps until she stood between the 2 groups. Gasps came from the white men as they took in her appearance. Her skin burnished by sun, her hair in Apache braids, her dress a mixture of salvaged cloth and deerskin. "Mrs. McKenna," Morrison exclaimed. "Thank God we've come to take you home." "I am home," Sarah said quietly. The words fell into silence like stones into still water. Morrison's face went red. What these savages have confused you. Stockholm Syndrome, they call it. Don't worry, I'm not confused, Mr. Morrison, nor am I a captive." She lifted her chin. "I am the wife of Standing Wolf, by my own choice." The reaction was immediate and ugly. Several of the civilians cursed. One spat on the ground. The lieutenant looked as if she'd slapped him. "Ma'am, surely you don't mean... These are Apache... They killed..." "White bandits killed my husband. Apache warriors saved me from dying in the desert." Sarah's voice grew stronger. "I was given a choice, and I chose to stay." Henley pushed his horse forward, face twisted with disgust. "You're living with the same savages who murdered my brother." "Your brother died in the bandit attack. The Apaches drove the bandits off. Or had you forgotten?" Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Just as you all forgot about me when you left me to die." That silenced them for a moment. Morrison recovered first, his tone changing to one of paternal concern. "Mrs. McKenna, Sarah, you've obviously been through a terrible ordeal. No one blames you for doing what you had to do to survive, but you're safe now. You can come back to civilization. Put this all behind you." "And go where?" Sarah asked. "To California, where I know no one, back to Missouri, to be the strange widow who lived with Indians, to work as a laundress or seamstress, scraping by on charity and pity. Better that than this," Morrison gestured at the camp. "Living like an animal, sharing a bed with..." Standing Wolf moved so fast Morrison didn't have time to finish the insult. The warrior's knife was at the trader's throat before anyone could react, though he didn't break skin. "Speak with respect," he said in clear English, "or don't speak." The soldiers reached for their weapons, but Chief Naichi's sharp command froze everyone in place. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. "Stop," Sarah said firmly. She placed her hand on Standing Wolf's arm, feeling the tension thrumming through him. "Please." Slowly. Standing Wolf lowered the knife and stepped back, but his eyes never left Morrison's face. The lieutenant tried to regain control. "Mrs. McKenna, regardless of your feelings, we have orders. Any white woman found among hostile Indians must be returned for her own safety. It's the law." "Whose law?" Sarah challenged. "Not Apache law. And last I checked, this is still Apache land, treaty or no treaty." "Not for long," one of the civilians muttered, earning sharp looks from his companions. The lieutenant shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Please, ma'am, don't make this difficult. Come willingly, and there won't be any trouble." "And if I don't?" He couldn't meet her eyes. "Then we'll have to take you anyway. And these Indians who've been harboring you, well, it won't go well for them." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Sarah felt the weight of eyes on her, Apache eyes, watching to see what the white woman would do when her old world beckoned. Would she betray them to save herself? Would she bring destruction on them as Black Crow had always predicted? "Lieutenant," she said, her voice carrying clearly. "How old are you?" He blinked, caught off guard. 22, ma'am." 22, the same age I was when my husband died. Tell me, have you ever been married?" "No, ma'am." "Have you ever lost everything, been abandoned by those you trusted? Found kindness where you expected cruelty?" She didn't wait for answers. "These people took me in when my own kind left me to die. They've taught me strength, courage, how to survive. My husband, Standing Wolf, has shown me more honor and respect than I ever knew in my first marriage, though I loved Thomas dearly." She paused, gathering courage for what came next. "I carry his child." The lie came easily. though it made her stomach clench. She wasn't pregnant, not yet, but the white men wouldn't know that. Behind her, she heard Sage Mother's quick intake of breath, but the old woman said nothing. The effect on the rescue party was immediate. Morrison's face went from red to white. The lieutenant looked as if he might be sick. To them, the idea of a white woman carrying an Apache child was the ultimate degradation. You see, Sarah pressed on, even if I wanted to return, which I don't, what place would there be for me in your world? What place for my child? Dear God, Morrison breathed. They've ruined you. No, Sarah said firmly. They've saved me. Now go. Tell whoever sent you that Sarah McKenna is dead. She died in the desert months ago. Tell them there's only White Dove now. That's what they call me here. Tell them I chose this life, and I'll defend it. The lieutenant struggled with his orders, his prejudices, his obvious desire to be anywhere but here. Finally, he made his decision. I'll need something to prove we'd found you, to show you're alive and unwilling to return. Sarah reached up and unpinned a small brooch from her dress, the last remnant of her old life, a gift from Thomas on their wedding day. She'd kept it hidden, a secret talisman. Now she handed it to the lieutenant. Give this to anyone who asks. Tell them Sarah McKenna sends her regards from beyond the grave. The soldiers and civilians exchanged uncertain looks. This wasn't how rescues were supposed to go. The woman was supposed to weep with gratitude, fall into their arms, beg for salvation, not stand there like some Apache warrior woman, choosing savagery over civilization. Morrison made one last attempt. Sarah, please, think about what you're doing. Think about your immortal soul. I have, she replied. And I found more Christianity in this savage camp than I ever saw in civilization. Now go, before someone decides you've worn out your welcome. The lieutenant gave the order to withdraw. As they wheeled their horses around, Henley couldn't resist a parting shot. You'll regret this. When the army comes to clear out these savages, you'll burn with them. Then I'll burn, Sarah said simply. They watched the riders disappear into the desert haze. Only when they were gone did Sarah's knees begin to shake. Standing Wolf's arm came around her waist, supporting her. A child, he murmured in her ear. A lie, she whispered back. But perhaps not forever. His arm tightened around her. Answer enough. Chief Naichi approached, his weathered face grave. He spoke at length in Apache, and Sage Mother translated. The chief says you have cut your last tie to the white world. This was brave, but also dangerous. They will speak of you in their towns, the white woman who chose Apaches. Some will come to stare. Others, she paused meaningfully. Others will come for worse reasons. I know, Sarah said, but what else could I do? The chief studied her for a long moment, then nodded. He spoke again, and this time Standing Wolf translated, his voice thick with emotion. He says you are no longer the white woman who sleeps in our camp. You are Apache now, in heart, if not in blood. White Dove is your name, and it will be honored. The band dispersed slowly, voices rising in discussion of what had just occurred. Some were worried. Would the soldiers return in force? Others were amazed. The white woman had chosen them over her own kind. That night, Standing Wolf came to their dwelling early. Without words, he took Sarah in his arms, holding her as if she might vanish like smoke. She pressed her face against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of leather and sage. No regrets, he asked. None, she said, and meant it. Though I should warn you, Sage Mother will expect that lie to become truth soon enough. She felt him smile against her hair. Then we should work on that. For the first time since their strange marriage began, they came together as husband and wife in truth, and in the darkness of their dwelling, with the stars wheeling overhead and the desert wind singing outside. Sarah knew she had finally come home. The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and bright. with eagles circling high above the canyon walls. Sarah White Dove now, she reminded herself, sat quietly as Sage Mother and Singing River prepared her for what would be her true wedding day. The hasty arrangement born of ancient law was past. Today, she would choose Standing Wolf before all the people, and he would choose her. "Be still," Sage Mother chided as she worked sweet oil into Sarah's hair. "You move like a nervous colt." "I wasn't this nervous when I married Thomas," Sarah admitted. "That was in a church, with my mother's dress and neighbors watching. This is more true," Singing River said softly. Her son, Little Hawk, had recovered fully from his wounds and now played outside, his laughter carrying on the wind. Church wedding is for others to see. Apache wedding is for the spirits to bless. They dressed her in soft doeskin, bleached pale as moonlight, and worked with beads and patterns that told stories Sarah was only beginning to understand. Blue for the sky spirits, green for the earth, red for the life force that connected all things, the turquoise necklace. Standing Wolf's first gift lay bright against her throat. Now the paint, Sage Mother said, producing small pots of pigment, white clay for purity, red ochre for strength. They painted symbols on her cheeks and forehead, each with meaning. Sarah submitted to their ministrations. Understanding this was as much for them as for her. By preparing her properly, they were accepting her fully into their world. Meanwhile, Standing Wolf underwent his own preparations in the desert. He had left before dawn with the other warriors to pray and purify himself for the ceremony. Chief Naichi had sent him with specific instructions and blessings, for this wedding would be unlike any the band had witnessed. A joining of two peoples, two ways of seeing the world. "Are you frightened?" Singing River asked as she adjusted the ceremonial dress. Sarah considered the question. "No, not frightened, but—" she searched for words. "When I married Thomas, I knew what was expected. How to be a farmer's wife, how to keep house, how to fit into that world. Here, I'm still learning. What if I fail him?" Sage Mother's weathered hands stilled their work. "Child, you found water in the desert. You saved Little Hawk. You stood between warriors and soldiers and chose your path. What is there left to fail?" "I want to give him children," Sarah said quietly. "His first wife did, but then lost them. What if I can't?" "The spirits give children in their time." Sage Mother said firmly, "Your body is strong, your heart is good. When the time is right, babies will come. For now, think only of today." They emerged from the dwelling as the sun reached its peak. The entire band had gathered in a great circle, leaving space in the center for the ceremony. Sarah had attended 2 Apache weddings since living among them, but this would be different. Chief Naichi had made that clear. This would honor both traditions, creating something new. Standing Wolf waited in the circle's center, and Sarah's breath caught at the sight of him. He wore his finest war shirt, worked with porcupine quills and silver conchos. His hair hung loose, adorned with eagle feathers that marked his victories and status. But it was his eyes that held her, dark and intense, full of promise. Chief Naichi stood between them, holding items Sarah had helped prepare, a length of braided rope made from both Apache yucca fiber and threads from her old mourning dress, 2 cups carved from gourds, a blanket woven with symbols of unity. The chief spoke in Apache, his voice carrying to all assembled. Sage Mother translated softly for Sarah. "We witness something new under the sun. 2 peoples, 2 paths, becoming one. The spirits have watched this unfold, have tested these 2, have found them worthy." He turned to Standing Wolf first, asking the ritual questions. Would he protect this woman, provide for her, honor her ways, while teaching her his own? Standing Wolf's responses rang clear and strong. Then to Sarah, would she stand beside this man in plenty and in want? Would she bear his children and raise them to honor both bloods? Would she defend his people as her own? "I will," Sarah said in Apache, then repeated it in English. "With all that I am, I will." Chief Naichi took the braided rope Apache strength wound with white woman's cloth and bound their wrists together. "As different fibers make the rope stronger, so your differences will strengthen your union. As the rope binds, so are you bound." They drank from the shared cups, water from the spring Sarah had found, blessed by the medicine man. They stepped together onto the blanket, symbolically creating one household from two lives. But then Chief Naichi did something unexpected. He produced a Bible. Sarah gasped, recognizing it as hers, salvaged from her wagon so many months ago. She'd thought it lost forever. "White Dove has taught us that her God and our spirits perhaps see with the same eyes," the chief said in careful English. "So, we honor both ways." He handed the Bible to Sarah, with trembling hands. She opened it to the passages she'd marked long ago, when preparing for her first wedding, but now the words held new meaning. "Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee for whither thou goest. I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people." Her voice broke on the last words. Standing Wolf's hand tightened on hers, and when she looked up, she saw understanding in the faces around her. Ruth's words to Naomi, spoken across cultures, across worlds, they understood. Standing Wolf spoke then, surprising everyone, in heavily accented but clear English. He recited words he must have memorized for this moment. "You came to us in storm. You stayed through trial. You brought water to our thirst and healing to our wounds. You are bone of my bone now, blood of my blood. Where you go, I follow. Where I go, you are with me. This I swear before all spirits, before your God, before our people." Even Black Crow, standing at the edge of the crowd, nodded slowly. The words were good. The promise was true. Chief Naichi cut the rope binding their wrists, but immediately wrapped the blanket around both their shoulders. No longer two but one, no longer stranger but family, no longer Sarah or Standing Wolf alone, but White Dove and Standing Wolf together. Let all witness. Let all remember. The crowd erupted in celebration. Drums appeared, and songs began. Wedding songs, victory songs, songs of new beginnings. Food was brought out, precious supplies saved for this moment. Even in hardship, the Apache knew how to celebrate joy. As the sun set, painting the desert in shades of fire, Sarah found herself swept into the dancing. The steps were still foreign to her, but willing hands guided her. Voices encouraged her. Standing Wolf danced beside her, his usual stoicism replaced by something approaching joy. Late in the evening, as the celebration continued, they slipped away to their dwelling. Someone, probably Singing River, had prepared it with fresh pine boughs and wildflowers, filling the space with sweet scent. "My wife," Standing Wolf said softly, as if testing the words. "Truly now, my wife." "My husband," Sarah replied, marveling at how different the word felt now than it had with Thomas. Not better or worse, but different, chosen rather than expected, earned rather than assumed. They came together with a passion born of long waiting, of trials overcome, of choice made and remade, outside. The wedding songs continued, but inside their private world, they spoke a language that needed no translation. Later, as they lay entwined on their marriage bed, Standing Wolf traced the paint on Sarah's face, now smudged but still visible. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "The church wedding, the white dress, the ways of your people." Sarah considered, then shook her head. "That was another woman's life, another woman's dream. I am White Dove now, and this, all of this, is more than I ever imagined possible." "Even living in hiding, even knowing soldiers will come." She pressed closer to him. "Even then, we'll face whatever comes, together." A commotion outside broke the moment. Excited voices. Running feet. Standing Wolf was on his feet instantly, reaching for his weapons. but the voices held joy, not alarm. Sage Mother appeared at their doorway, her face grave despite the celebration. "Riders coming, Apache, but not our band. They carry news." The newlyweds dressed quickly and emerged to find the camp gathering around 3 travel-worn Apache warriors. Sarah recognized their markings. They were from a band that lived further south, near the Mexican border. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Red Sky, spoke urgently with Chief Naiche. His words sent ripples of concern through the crowd. Standing Wolf translated for Sarah. "The soldiers mass at Fort Buchanan. Many more than before. They speak of clearing the territory, of forcing all Apache onto reservations. They know of a white woman living with our band. Some say she is a captive to be rescued. Others say she is a witch who has turned Apache hearts against peace. Either way, they come." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. Her choice at the spring had brought this. Her presence endangered everyone. Chief Naiche raised his hand for silence. He spoke at length, and the people listened. Plans would be made. Decisions taken, but not tonight. Tonight was for celebration, for joy, for the new couple to have their moment of peace. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But as the crowd dispersed, Sarah caught the worried looks, the whispered conversations. The honeymoon, such as it was, would be brief. War was coming to their desert sanctuary, and she was part of the reason why. Standing Wolf's arm came around her shoulders. "No regrets," he said firmly. "Whatever comes, we chose this. We choose each other." Sarah leaned into his strength, drawing courage from his certainty. Tomorrow they would run or fight or die. But tonight, they were simply husband and wife. 2 hearts made one under the vast desert sky. The wedding drums played on, defiant against the darkness, celebrating love in the shadow of war. The attack came at dawn, 3 days after the wedding. Sarah woke to the crack of rifle fire and the thunder of cavalry hooves on stone. The army had found their canyon hideaway, approaching under cover of darkness to surround the camp. "Move!" Standing Wolf pulled her from their blankets as bullets tore through the hide walls of their dwelling. Outside, chaos reigned. Warriors grabbed weapons while women and children fled toward the narrow paths leading higher into the canyon. The soldiers had positioned themselves on the ridges, firing down into the camp. Sarah ran with the others, her medical supplies clutched against her chest. A child fell beside her, screaming, not shot but terrified. She scooped him up without breaking stride, following Singing River toward a defensive position among the rocks. The Apache warriors fought with desperate courage, using every boulder and crevice for cover. But the soldiers had numbers and ammunition. The big guns, mountain howitzers, began their terrible work, shells exploding against the canyon walls, sending deadly rock fragments flying. "Here," Sage Mother pulled Sarah into a shallow cave where wounded were already being brought. "You heal. We'll hold them." Sarah worked frantically, tearing cloth for bandages, pressing wounds closed, trying to save who she could. A young warrior named Swift Eagle came in with half his shoulder torn away. She packed the wound, tied it off, moved to the next. No time for gentleness, only efficiency. Standing Wolf appeared at the cave mouth, blood running from a gash on his forehead. "They want to talk," he said grimly. Under white flag, Chief Naiche had already gathered the surviving war leaders. From their position, Sarah could see the soldiers below, one officer riding forward with a hated flag of truce. She recognized him, Captain Morrison. No relation to Samuel, but sharing the same rigid certainty that Apache were less than human. The captain's terms were simple and brutal: surrender the white woman, and we'll allow the rest of you to travel to the reservation peacefully. Refuse, and we'll consider you hostiles to be eliminated. The Apache leaders returned to council. Sarah tried to focus on the wounded, but she could feel the weight of decision pressing down. How many would die for her choice to stay? Black Crow spoke first, And though he'd accepted her marriage, his words were harsh. One life for many, it's logical. She's one of us now, Standing Wolf countered. We don't trade our people. She's white, Black Crow snapped. They'll never stop coming for her. How many of our children die for your wife? Others voiced opinions, torn between honor and survival. Chief Naichi listened to all, his weathered face revealing nothing. Finally, he stood. White Dove will choose, he said simply. She decided to stay. Now she decides whether to go. All eyes turned to Sarah. She set down her medical supplies, wiped blood from her hands, and stood. The wounded warriors watched her, men she'd saved, men who'd protected her, men who might die if she stayed. I'll go, she said quietly, but not as their captive. I'll tell them I want to leave, that I was afraid to before. I'll make them believe it. No, Standing Wolf's voice was iron. I won't let you. You will, Sarah interrupted, because it's the only way. She turned to Sage Mother. The ghost dance ceremony, you told me about it once, how warriors would dance until they seemed dead, then rise again. The old woman's eyes sharpened with understanding. It's dangerous. If they discover the deception, they won't. Sarah's mind raced, formulating the plan. I'll go to them, but I'll seem damaged, broken by my time here. They expect to rescue a helpless victim. I'll give them one. Once they take me to their fort, thinking me harmless and grateful, I'll find a way to... To what? Standing Wolf demanded. Escape, return here. They'll move us to the reservation. Scatter us. You'll never find us again. Sarah met his eyes. Then you'll find me. You're the best tracker in the territory. You found me in a sandstorm. You'll find me again. The debate continued, but Sarah saw the acceptance creeping into their faces. It was a desperate plan, but better than watching their children cut down. Chief Naichi made the decision they would try the deception. Preparations began immediately. Sarah had to look the part of a broken captive. They tore her Apache dress, dirtied her face, made her hair wild. But the hardest part was psychological. She had to make the soldiers believe she'd been held against her will, abused, desperate for rescue. Remember, Sage Mother coached, white men see what they expect. They expect a woman grateful for salvation, horrified by her experience, eager to forget. Give them that. Standing Wolf pulled her aside as the final preparations were made. This is madness. Once you're in their hands... I survived the desert trial. I survived the drought. I'll survive this. She pressed something into his hand, the turquoise necklace. Hold this for me. When you come for me and you will come, bring it, so I'll know it's you. He crushed her against him, and she felt him trembling. The warrior who faced death without flinching shook at losing her. I'll find you, he promised. No matter where they take you, how long it takes, I'll find you. I know. The performance began. Sarah stumbled from the Apache position, wailing and reaching toward the soldiers. Help me, please, God, help me! They made me! Forced me! She collapsed dramatically at the edge of soldier territory, sobbing hysterically. The reaction was immediate. Soldiers rushed forward, lifting her carefully, exclaiming over her condition. Captain Morrison himself came to see, and Sarah grabbed his coat desperately. Thank you. They said you'd come, but I didn't believe. The things they made me do. She dissolved into calculated hysteria, letting them see what they expected. A violated woman, desperate for civilization's comfort. You're safe now, Mrs. McKenna. The captain assured her. We'll take you to Fort Buchanan, then arrange transport back east. You'll never have to see these savages again. Promise me. Sarah gasped, injecting real fear into her voice. Fear that her deception would fail, that people would die for nothing. Promise you won't hurt them. They don't know better. The chief, he tried to protect me from the worst of it. Please, just let them go to the reservation peacefully." Morrison's face softened slightly. The poor woman, traumatized into sympathizing with her captors. "If they cooperate, we won't pursue hostile action. You have my word." As soldiers carried her toward their medical wagon, Sarah risked one look back. The Apache were emerging from their positions, weapons lowered but not surrendered. She saw Standing Wolf among them, his face a mask of stone. Only she could read the promise in his stance, the vow in his stillness. The wagon rolled away, and Sarah began the hardest performance of her life. She had to maintain the fiction of the broken captive while planning her next moves. The soldiers were gentle with her, offering water, blankets, sympathy. She accepted it all with tearful gratitude while memorizing every detail of their positions, their routines, their weaknesses. At Fort Buchanan, she was treated as a curiosity and an object of pity. The commander's wife, Mrs. Phillips, took charge of her, clucking over her savage appearance and immediately setting about restoring her to propriety. Sarah submitted to baths, proper clothes, endless questions about her ordeal. "You poor dear, Mrs. Phillips cooed. "The things those animals must have done to you, but don't worry, we'll have you right as rain. There's a minister who specializes in redeeming women in your situation." Sarah played her part perfectly, flinching at loud noises, crying at random moments, clinging to her rescuer's kindness. But at night, alone in the small room they'd given her, she planned. The Apache had been forced onto the reservation at San Carlos, a place of poor land and bitter water. Standing Wolf would be there, waiting, planning his own moves. She had to be patient, had to maintain her deception until the right moment. Days passed. Sarah learned the fort's routines, identified which soldiers were lazy on watch, which doors were left unguarded. She heard talk of sending her east on the next supply train, of finding her proper placement with a Christian charity that handled fallen women. Time was running out, but Standing Wolf had promised to find her, and Sarah held to that promise like a lifeline, somewhere under the same stars. Her husband was coming for her. She just had to be ready when he did. The moon was dark the night she heard it, the call of a wolf, impossibly close to the fort. The soldiers heard it too, joking nervously about the boldness of the creature. But Sarah knew that call, had heard Standing Wolf make it during hunting expeditions. He had come, as promised. Now she had to find the courage to go to him, to leave safety for uncertainty once more. But as she fingered the edge of the too-tight civilized dress, remembered the sympathy that masked disgust in the eyes of her rescuers, Sarah knew there was no choice. She belonged with Standing Wolf, with the Apache, with the desert that had tested and claimed her. Tomorrow, she would make her move. Tonight, she whispered a prayer to whatever spirits listened, Apache or Christian or both entwined. "Give me strength for what comes next." The canyon echoed with gunfire as dawn broke red across the desert sky. Sarah pressed herself against the rocky outcrop, clutching her medical supplies as bullets whined overhead like angry hornets. The army had come in force, 2 full companies of cavalry, supported by Apache scouts who knew every hiding place in these sacred hills. "White Dove," Singing River's voice cut through the chaos. "The wounded, by the old juniper!" Sarah didn't hesitate. She ran low, darting between boulders as rifle fire kicked up dust at her heels. 3 warriors lay bleeding in the shadow of the ancient tree, one with a shattered leg, another clutching his belly, the third barely conscious from blood loss. She worked with desperate efficiency, her hands steady despite the battle raging around her. The belly wound was worst. She packed it with the moss that grew near the spring, the same remedy Sage Mother had taught her. The warrior, barely 18, grabbed her hand. "Tell my mother," he began. "Tell her yourself," Sarah said firmly. "You're not dying today." Standing Wolf appeared through the smoke, his rifle empty, quiver nearly depleted. They're pressing hard on the eastern approach. We need to fall back to the inner caves. These men can't be moved yet. They'll have to be. His face was grim beneath the war paint. The soldiers brought something new. They call it a Gatling gun. As if to prove his point, a terrible mechanical chattering filled the air. Sarah watched in horror as the strange weapon sprayed death across their defensive positions, cutting through cover that would have stopped ordinary bullets. "Help me," she commanded. Together they fashioned litters from blankets and spear shafts. Other women appeared to help carry the wounded, their faces set with determination, even as tears tracked through the dust on their cheeks. The retreat was orderly, but desperate. The Apache knew these canyons intimately, but the Army scouts, turncoat Apaches from other bands, knew them too. Every secret path had become a potential trap. In the relative safety of the inner caves, Chief Naichi gathered his remaining leaders. The old chief had taken a bullet in the shoulder, but refused treatment until his people were safe. Sarah worked on him as he spoke, his voice still commanding despite the pain. "They will not stop," he said in Apache, then repeated it in English for Sarah's benefit. "This white woman's war machine, it changes everything. Our bows, our courage, not enough anymore." Black Crow, blood streaming from a scalp wound, spoke bitterly. "I said this would come. The white woman brought them here. Her presence curses us." "No." Standing Wolf's voice was sharp. "They would have come anyway. They always come. At least now we die as warriors, not penned like cattle on their reservation." "Not all need die," Chief Naichi said quietly. "They want White Dove. Perhaps if she—" "No." Sarah's interruption surprised everyone. "I won't be the excuse for surrender, and I won't leave my people." "Your people," Black Crow laughed harshly. "You've been here one season. I have lived here 40 winters. These are not your people. White woman." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "Then why did I spend the night saving your nephew's life? Why do I bleed for this band? Why do I carry—" She stopped, her hand moving instinctively to her belly. Sage Mother's eyes sharpened. "White Dove." Sarah nodded slowly. 2 moons now, I'm certain." The cave fell silent except for the distant sounds of battle. Standing Wolf stared at her, his expression cycling through surprise, joy, and despair in quick succession. "You didn't tell me," he said softly. "I wasn't sure. And then the army came, and I thought—" She shrugged helplessly. "I thought there would be time." Chief Naichi closed his eyes. "A child of 2 bloods. The spirits have a dark sense of humor." He opened his eyes. "Decision made. We cannot all escape, but some must survive. The young, the women with children, those who carry the future." "I won't leave you," Standing Wolf said immediately. "You will," the chief commanded. "Your duty is to your wife and unborn child now. Take whoever will go. Head south to the Mexican mountains. Our cousins there will shelter you. And you," the old chief smiled, a warrior's smile. "I was born in this canyon. If I must die, let it be here. Some of us will hold them. Give you time." The argument that followed was fierce, but brief. Time was precious, and the soldiers were regrouping for another assault. In the end, it was decided Standing Wolf would lead a small group south, the youngest warriors, women with children, and Sarah. The rest would make their final stand in the canyon they'd called home for generations. Sarah found herself saying goodbye to people who'd become family. Sage Mother pressed herbs into her hands. "For the baby," the old woman said. "To make him strong. Come with us," Sarah pleaded. "My bones are too old for running. My husband is buried here. My children. This is my place." She touched Sarah's face gently. "You carry our future now, Apache and white, bound in one body. Perhaps this child will walk between worlds better than we ever could." The escape began at full dark, 20 souls slipping through secret paths while their kin engaged the soldiers to provide cover. Sarah could hear the battle raging behind them, the mechanical chatter of the Gatling gun, the war cries of warriors who knew they faced their last fight. They moved in silence, Standing Wolf leading with the sure instinct of one born to these lands. Sarah walked in the middle of the group, helping a young mother carry her infant twins. Every sound made her heart race. Had they been discovered, were soldiers waiting ahead? Dawn found them deep in a maze of arroyos, the sound of pursuit finally fading. They'd done it, escaped the trap, but at such cost. Sarah thought of Chief Naichi, of Sage Mother, of all those who'd stayed behind. By now, the battle would be over. She didn't need to ask who'd won. Standing Wolf called a brief halt by a hidden spring. As the others drank and refilled water gourds, he came to sit beside her. "A child," he said wonderingly. "You should have told me." Would it have changed anything? He considered. No, but I would have. He struggled for words. I would have been more careful with you. Despite everything, Sarah almost smiled. When have you ever been careless with me? He touched her face, the gesture infinitely gentle. I promised to protect you. Now I must protect too. The journey to Mexico is long, dangerous. If something happens to me, nothing will happen, Sarah said firmly. We've come too far to lose each other now. But 3 days later, their luck ran out. A patrol of Apache scouts, the turncoats who served the army for whiskey and silver, found their trail. The pursuit that followed was relentless. The soldiers had fresh horses, ample supplies. Sarah's group had desperation and knowledge of the land, but it wasn't enough. They were forced into a box canyon, backs against stone walls that had once meant safety, but now meant trap. Standing Wolf organized their pitiful defenses. 8 warriors against 30 soldiers. The mathematics of doom. That's when Ghost Dancer, the young warrior Sarah barely knew, proposed the desperate plan. The soldiers want White Dove. If we make them think they have her. No, Standing Wolf said immediately. Listen. Ghost Dancer insisted. My sister, Moonshadow. She's near White Dove's size, in the dust and confusion of battle, wrapped in White Dove's blanket. The plan was insane, suicidal, but it offered a slim chance. Moonshadow would play Sarah's part, allow herself to be captured while screaming and fighting. In the chaos, the real Sarah and a few others might slip away through a crevice too narrow for horses. I won't let another die for me. Sarah protested. Moonshadow, all of 17 and fierce as any warrior, spoke up. You carry a child of 2 peoples. That matters more than one life. Besides, she grinned. I'm faster than any soldier. Once in the rocks, I'll disappear like smoke. There was no time to argue. The soldiers were forming up for their final assault. Quickly, Sarah and Moonshadow exchanged outer clothing. Sarah rubbed dirt in her hair, changing its color, while Moonshadow practiced Sarah's way of moving. If this works, Sarah told her, I'll name my daughter for you. When this works, Moonshadow corrected. Now go, and White Dove, make sure our people's story survives. In your child, in your memory. Someone must remember. The attack came moments later, in the dust and gunfire. Moonshadow played her part perfectly, fighting like a captured wildcat, screaming in accented English, drawing every eye. Sarah and 3 others, Standing Wolf, Singing River, and her son Little Hawk squeezed through the narrow crevice just as the soldiers overwhelmed the defenders. Behind them, they heard the captain's triumphant shout, We have her, we have the white woman. They ran through the gathering darkness, Sarah's heart breaking with each step. How many more would die for her freedom? How many families torn apart because she'd chosen love over convention? But her hand found her belly, felt the promise growing there, and she knew the answer. This child, born of 2 worlds, heir to both triumph and tragedy, was worth any sacrifice. In this new life lay hope that someday, somehow, the killing might stop. They ran toward Mexico, toward uncertainty, toward a future none of them could see. Behind them, the canyons that had sheltered the Apache for centuries fell silent, filled only with ghosts and soldiers' lies. The story wasn't over, but this chapter, written in blood and tears and desperate courage, was coming to its close. The garrison town of Fort Grant sprawled like a wound against the desert landscape. Sarah sat in the commander's office, her hands folded demurely in her lap, playing the role of the rescued captive one more time. Through the window, she could see soldiers drilling in the dusty parade ground, unaware that the woman they'd saved was planning her final escape. "Mrs. McKenna," Colonel Harrison said kindly. "Your ordeal is nearly over. We've arranged transport to Tucson, then by stage to California. Your sister has been notified. She's overjoyed you're alive." Sarah manufactured tears of gratitude. "You've been so kind. Colonel, after everything—" She let her voice trail off, the perfect picture of a traumatized woman. 3 weeks had passed since Moonshadow's sacrifice allowed their escape. The army believed they had rescued Sarah, while the real White Dove had vanished into Mexico with Standing Wolf and the remnants of their band. But she couldn't stay hidden forever. The child growing within her demanded better than a life in exile, and Standing Wolf deserved more than shadows. That night, alone in her quarters, Sarah penned a letter to her sister. She told the truth about her marriage, her choice, her love for a man their world would never accept. She sealed it, knowing Margaret would likely burn it upon reading. But the truth needed telling, even if no one wanted to hear it. The wolf call came at midnight, so faint others might mistake it for wind. Sarah's heart leaped. She dressed quickly in the Mexican peasant clothes hidden beneath her mattress, gifts from sympathetic locals who'd seen through her charade. The window opened silently. She'd oiled the hinges days ago. Standing Wolf waited in the shadows beyond the fort walls, 2 horses ready. Without words, he lifted her into the saddle, his hands lingering on her growing belly. They rode hard through the night, not toward Mexico this time, but east, toward the Chiricahua Mountains where scattered Apache bands still lived free. "The others?" Sarah asked when they finally stopped to rest. "Safe. Singing River leads them now. But I couldn't stay away. The child—" "Our child," Sarah corrected. "Who will know both worlds, speak both languages, carry both bloods with pride." They traveled for days, avoiding patrols, living on desert provisions. Standing Wolf had changed, the weight of loss heavy on his shoulders, but his devotion to her unwavering. He spoke of building a new life in the hidden valleys, of teaching their child the old ways before they vanished forever. But fate had other plans. Outside the town of Wilcox, they encountered a mail coach under attack, not by Apache, but by white bandits. Without thinking, Standing Wolf intervened, his rifle speaking death to men who preyed on travelers. Sarah tended the wounded guard, saving his life with her medical skills. Among the passengers was Judge Samuel Whitman, known across the territory as a fair man who'd advocated for Apache rights. He recognized the situation immediately. An Apache warrior and a white woman traveling together, the woman clearly with child. "I owe you my life," he told Standing Wolf. "But more than that, I see something here that gives me hope. Come to Tucson. I can't promise safety, but I can offer you a chance at a legal life together." It was an impossible dream, a white woman and an Apache man, married in the eyes of the law. But Whitman had connections, influence, and most importantly, he had conscience. He arranged papers, found witnesses willing to swear they'd seen Sarah kidnapped rather than choosing her fate. He crafted a story the territory could swallow, a woman who'd fallen in love with her rescuer, not her captor. The ceremony was small, private, held in Whitman's study with only his wife and a progressive minister attending. But it was legal, binding, recognized. For the first time, Sarah and Standing Wolf existed in both worlds. They settled on the edge of Tucson, on land Whitman helped them purchase. Standing Wolf worked as a scout for peaceful expeditions. his knowledge valuable to scientists and mapmakers who needed safe passage. Sarah established a small clinic, treating Apache and Mexican and white alike, her reputation growing as a healer who turned none away. Their son was born as the century turned, a child with his father's strong features and his mother's green eyes. They named him Samuel Standing Wolf McKenna, a name carrying all their histories, all their hopes. The territory changed around them. The wild spaces shrank. The free Apache forced onto reservations or killed. But in their small corner, they carved out existence. Other mixed couples found them, drawn by the example of survival. Sarah taught Apache children alongside white ones in her kitchen school. Standing Wolf trained young men of all races in the desert skills that were being forgotten. They faced hatred, of course. Rocks through windows, threats in the night, businesses that wouldn't serve them. But they also found unexpected allies. The Jewish merchant who extended credit, the Mexican families who shared feast days, the reformed soldier who stood guard when threats grew serious. Margaret never answered Sarah's letters, but others did. Singing River wrote from the reservation, telling of struggles and small victories. Ghost Dancer had survived. Moonshadow, too. The soldiers had realized their deception, but too late to matter. Chief Naichi had died as he lived, a warrior to the end. But his words survived in the stories told around hidden fires. Years passed. Their son grew tall and strong, equally comfortable in his father's moccasins or his mother's world of books. 2 daughters followed, Faith and Hope. Sarah called them, though Standing Wolf gave them Apache names the white world couldn't pronounce. On their 10th anniversary, Standing Wolf gave Sarah a gift, the turquoise necklace she'd entrusted to him so long ago, restrung with new beads that told their story in symbols. She wore it always after that, a bridge between worlds hanging over her heart. They grew old together, not easily but genuinely, watching the frontier transform into something neither fully recognized. The wild Apache were gone, but their children carried the blood forward. The wagon trains ceased rolling, replaced by railroads and automobiles. But the desert remained, eternal and patient. When Standing Wolf passed, Sarah buried him in the old way, with his weapons and his honor intact. She lived another decade, long enough to see their grandchildren born, to write their story for those who would listen. The clinic became a hospital, the kitchen school a proper schoolhouse, their small farm a gathering place for all who remembered when the world was wider. Sarah died in her sleep at 73, her children around her, Apache prayers mixing with Christian hymns. They buried her beside Standing Wolf, under a marker that read simply, Sarah White Dove McKenna, she chose love. The desert took back their bones. As it takes all things in time, but stories, like love, endure. In the veins of their descendants runs the blood of 2 peoples. In the memories of those they touched lives the proof that hatred need not be forever, that understanding can bloom even in the harshest ground. The Apache say that nothing truly dies if someone remembers. Sarah and Standing Wolf are remembered still in the hawk's cry over hidden springs, in the courage of those who choose love over fear, in every child born between worlds who refuses to choose one over the other. Their love story ended not with tragedy, but with truth that 2 people, against all odds and expectations, can create something new and beautiful and lasting, that the human heart, like the desert rose, can bloom anywhere if given half a chance. And somewhere in the Sonoran Desert, where the old trails cross and the ancient springs still flow, travelers sometimes speak of seeing them still, a woman with sun-bright hair and a warrior proud and tall, riding together into the endless sunset, finally and forever free. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining me on this incredible journey through Sarah and Standing Wolf's story. I hope their tale of love transcending boundaries has touched your heart as deeply as it has mine. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening to this story. Please share in the comments below so we can connect across the miles, just as Sarah and Standing Wolf connected across cultures. If you enjoyed this Wild West love story, Please subscribe to From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about what moved you most. Your comments and stories inspire me to keep bringing these forgotten tales of the American frontier to life. Until we meet again on the dusty trails of history, keep your hearts open and your spirits wild.